If you're looking for a space to connect with a community focused on creativity and well-being, you're in the right place. Welcome to A Concept U, the podcast, where we explore creativity, intentional living, and self-expression. I'm your host, Michaela Ayana. Welcome to the playground. Today we are exploring what it means to return to yourself after burnout. By the end of this episode, you'll hear how to create a space for rest, reflection, and self-compassion, and really what it means, or what it feels like rather, to move gently back into your own flow. So let's get into today's episode. I first want to start off by saying hi. It has been quite a while since we last spoke. I think my last episode was when was that? March of this year. And a lot of different things have been happening since then. Life has been lifing, and I feel like I needed to take a step back from speaking on my podcast because my head was just not in the space that I needed it to be in order to show up as the best version of myself here. And because that is something that I talk a lot about, I didn't feel solid in what I had to say at the moment. But what I did was take a moment to pour into what I had going on and pour back into myself, and I have returned, quite literally. And so this is what that episode is about. We're going to talk about some of the things that have been going on in my life in the last couple of months and how I have been able to really refocus my attention on resting and recovering and not feeling guilty for doing that. There's a couple of things I want to talk to you guys about, but first, before we get started, I want to check in. How are you feeling? How is your body feeling? Are you tense right now? Are you gritting your teeth? Let's just go ahead and let the stress go. Let's relax our mind. Let's take a deep breath. And let's just be present. The first part we're going to start off with is this idea of letting go and changing places. So I recently moved. I used to live in North Carolina and moved there immediately after I finished my master's program and had to truly build my own community. I had no immediate family and none of my close friends there. And so I quite literally had to build my community. And I feel like that was something that I really needed to do, especially entering into my young adulthood phase of life. And it taught me so much about myself as far as what I liked to do for fun, because I realized that the easiest way for me to connect and to create community was to do things by myself because I enjoy doing them. And then along the way, I would find people who were also doing the things that I enjoyed doing. And so, of course, we would naturally connect over those things. I feel like now that I am in this next chapter, transitioning rather into this next chapter of life, and since I have moved out of the state, I have moved to New York, I have been doing more of the same. And I realized that that is really just the way that I like to create community. And I feel like it's so random and organic and just very true to who I am. And so I have been trying to lean into that as much as possible now that I have the energy to actually do that. One of the things that I have been thinking about a lot lately is the power of letting go, of surrendering. And this idea comes from something I actually wrote in my journal, where I spoke about loosening my grip and having that lead to a space of clarity and giving me the time and the necessary things that I would need in order to grow. And so I feel like moving to New York has given me that space, not only physically, but emotionally, to create distance between the things that I would do that would no longer serve who I am today, and just allow me to be in a space where, I don't have the answers to everything, and know that it is perfectly okay that that is the case. Letting go, of course, is never easy, but it is often necessary. And when we loosen our grip, we are met with a sense of clarity. Eventually, I'll say. This next chapter has been a wake-up call, almost a shedding of the layers of myself that I have been gripping on very tightly, and it has forced me to slow down, to rest, and return. One of the things that I realize I run to a lot, and I feel like is something that we all need, is returning to nature in some form, in some capacity. And often what that looks like for me is actually going to the water. I find that water is something that not only do you quite literally see your reflection in, but it is also something that teaches you a lot about just the way of being and how things should be, rather. So when I think about water, I think about the flows, the ripples as metaphors for how we should move through our thoughts, how we should move through our feelings, and how we should move through life transitions, especially when we have nothing else to give, when those transitions are quite literally the hardest things that we've ever had to do. I feel like water is just one of those learning lessons that I just gravitate to. When I think about, times when I've felt extremely stressed, or I feel like I just have so much on my shoulders, I'm carrying so much. Whenever I go to sit by the water or just look out and watch the waves, I always feel a sense of lightness, like all of the things that I have swirling in my head are somehow, some way softened by the waves. It's like every ripple, every wave that I see visibly is reminding me to breathe in. It's reminding me to breathe out and then to let go, because very clearly those waves are not permanent. They're going to ebb and they're going to flow, but it's not going to be the same exact way every single time. And it's also just a reminder of how fluid life and how fluid some of the experiences that we go through can be. And I think there's a lot of pain in surrendering to that, but then there's also a lot of excitement, because it's like anything could happen when you are open to the ebbs and flows and allowing that to change your point of view, to change your outcome, to change your surroundings. It's hard to stay open to that, but it's so necessary, because that's the only way that we can continue to evolve. That's one of the things that has been calling me a lot lately, just returning to the water. And I feel like the best way for me to explore that has been through maps. I absolutely love looking at maps. I have no idea why, but I just find it very interesting to know what's around me. I have a bunch of different lists on Google Maps where, if I'm seeing something online or someone recommends a spot, I'm like, well, I'm going to save this. We're going to keep this locked away for whenever I visit. And so I have a bunch of different lists based on the countries that I want to visit or that I've gotten recommendations for, but then also different states as well. As I have been here, I have just been dropping pins and saving spaces that I think I want to visit, but I have also been saving what I call thinking spots. And with this is something that I actually started before I moved here. I think I was visiting the city for my birthday earlier this year in April, and I was just wandering around by myself and just enjoying the city. It wasn't super cold, it wasn't super warm, but I realized that one of the memories I had was walking along, I think it's called High Line. I'm probably butchering that, but it is in Manhattan, and it's this long walkway with beautiful greenery and tons of art, and it's just a beautiful space on the west side. And I stumbled upon this area, and there was this beautiful portrait, and I'm forgetting the artist whose work it was, but this beautiful portrait of, I think, like maybe 3 men or 3 women on the side of a building. And then there was this tree kind of hanging over this bench. And I literally just sat down and just paused. I felt very grounded where I was. I wanted to soak in that feeling as much as I could. And I think that was the first thinking spot that I ever put on my Google Maps list. And I've realized that when I mark these different places, they are spaces where I feel, where it's easy for me to let go. It's easy for me to feel calm and stillness, even though there's so much chaos and things are so busy around me. I feel like both around me actually and mentally within my mind, I feel like it's important to have a place or multiple places where you feel relaxed. And sometimes that is in my home, in my space, but sometimes it's easier for me to do that when I'm in nature or when I am in a space where I feel surrounded by nature. And so that's something that I highly recommend for you to do. If you feel like you have a lot going on in your mind, figure out where your thinking spots are. Figure out where are the places in my town, in the country, in my state, where I have either been to already or maybe I want to go, and you can kind of sense how you feel when you are there physically. But especially for the places that you've already visited, that you feel comfortable, that you feel grounded, that you feel free to let your thoughts go, honestly, to quiet your mind and kind of move through whatever you're facing at the moment. I think this pours directly into how I have been resting and really focusing on recuperating my energy, because I had been moving 1,000 miles an hour this year. I had a group show that I curated in March. I had a solo show that I didn't curate, but I had to do a lot of prep for, in terms of hosting my family and friends, in terms of finishing my artwork, in terms of just making it a very holistic weekend. And I wanted it to fit a certain vision, because that's just something that I had been planning, I had been thinking about for 3 years, and it was finally here. And so I had my solo show in July, and the weeks, the months, the time leading up into that, I also was struggling very, very heavily with balancing all of my responsibilities, especially when it came to my job. And I realized that I was just honestly pouring from an empty cup for a really, really long time. And it got to a point where I just did not have anything left for myself. And that made me question myself a lot. Like I couldn't recognize who I was. I didn't know who I was. I had question marks everywhere. Even now, I mean, there's still question marks in a lot of different places, but I will say that because I gave myself permission to rest, to intentionally pause and really try to recover from my burnout, I am more comfortable and more used to sitting in these moments of uncertainty, because I know I don't have to have everything figured out, but I know that in order to figure it out, in order to feel confident in figuring it out, I have to take care of myself first. I have to pour into my cup first. That's just a necessity, non-negotiable necessity. And when you structure these intentional pauses into your life, into your space, especially when you feel even an ounce of burnout, even an ounce of exhaustion, it helps you to recover faster, because you're building that resilience. You're working yourself hard. You are taking time to rest and recover. And then you kind of repeat that cycle over and over again. But when you are constantly going through tough things without rest, you're going to hit a brick wall at some point. And I feel like, of course, it is important, and we're always going to deal with very difficult things in life. That is kind of how your resiliency is built. But recognizing when it is time for you to rest and not being afraid to do that is the most important part. Not being afraid to do that, but then also knowing how to build in that time to actually rest, even amongst all of the busyness, so that you can return to your flow and be able to rest without guilt. So this is something I had to give myself permission to do, to really pause and let go of the fear of disappointing other people, because what I needed to do most was focus on me so that I could feel whole. And this really started off with me taking off 6 weeks from work. So I took a 6-week sabbatical to really focus on my mental health. I just was not in a good space across the board, and I knew that I needed to take this time for myself now, because I was quite literally at my wit's end. And so I took that time to really recover from the loss of self, from the loss of looking in the mirror and not really recognizing who was looking back at me. And I gave myself that space to fall apart, to grieve, to just sit in that discomfort of heavy emotions and not knowing what my next step would be in any direction. And when I gave myself the time to do that, things started to feel lighter. My anxiety started to lessen up. I was pouring, more attention into my care. I was going on walks. I was eating better. I had started working on building my community and really doing things by myself just because I enjoyed it. I spent time with my family. I traveled a little bit. And I realized that this is the cycle of life. You fall apart, you grieve that loss, you pick up the pieces, and then you keep moving forward. And I realized that in my early adulthood, in the stage that I'm at, sitting in that discomfort and recognizing that I need to move at my own pace, despite any other outward pressure to be on a certain timeline, that is the key. That's what I needed to focus on. And so it took me 2 weeks to release and allow myself to be. It took me another 2 weeks to wander and try to kind of figure out, this new environment that I was in. And I feel like it wasn't until the last 2 weeks of my time that I really returned to a flow or a new normal. I feel like I really needed that time and space, unstructured time and space, honestly, to just wake up and decide, okay, today this is what I wanted to do. And I do not take that time for granted. I know that's not something that everyone has the opportunity to do. And I really, really am so grateful that I had the time and the resources to be able to do that. And I realized that sabbaticals don't have to be long periods of time, but they can be intentional time that you take for yourself. And so that is what I am taking into my next chapter, to continue surrendering, to continue to embrace whatever this next chapter has to offer and treat it as a new and blank page. And so the last thing that I want to kind of bring forward here in my reflection is this return to gentleness. I realized that as I was struggling through the different things that I have been carrying, that I had been craving a lot of gentleness, a lot of softness. And I think in this return to myself, that I'm, of course, not necessarily saying that I'm a brand new person. That's not the case. What I am saying, though, is that there are parts of me that I had to let go, or that I am in the process of learning to let go. And there are parts of me that are new, that I will continue to explore and continue to unravel, especially as I am moving into a new chapter. But the thing about this change, this space of uncertainty, is giving myself, or giving yourself, that gentleness as you are moving through these phases. Treating yourself with kind words, treating yourself with the things that you know you need to do in order to feel whole, in order to feel like your cup is full, and that the runover can pour into the things around you, not necessarily that you are pouring from your own cup. Giving yourself the space to do that involves you moving gently with intention and giving yourself the softness that you deserve. And one of my questions to myself is, okay, now that I know that that is what I need, that is what I deserve, that is what I'm working on giving myself more of, how do I fill the pages of these new chapters with that in mind? That is giving me a space to be more intentional about how I would like the next couple of years to unfold. I felt like coming into my adulthood, I didn't necessarily have a plan after my master's program. I didn't have, a next step, a goal that I was actually looking forward to, because I was living in that goal. Like, I got a full-time job. I moved to a new city. I had my own apartment. That was it. That was as far as I had planned. And so now I am getting myself to a space of thinking, okay, what does the Michaela 5 years from now want to feel like? What do I want my life to look like? How do I want to dress? How do I want to move? How do I want to learn? What are the different things that character, that version of myself, what are the different things that I might need in that moment? And that is how I am thinking about moving intentionally. And the thing that I have to start with is moving intentionally with that gentleness, with that softness, which is exactly what I have been craving. So with that, it's important to continue to ask yourself, what are the things that I need? How can I give those things to myself? I think growth and being in a moment of return really involves looking inward, as deep as you can possibly go, as comfortable or as uncomfortable as that might be, to truly sit with yourself and understand who you are in this very moment, to acknowledge and appreciate who you are, even if you are still getting acquainted with parts of yourself that are unknown. Even those parts still deserve kindness. And so that's really everything that I've been learning. That's everything that's been on my mind. I am excited to bring this podcast back. I feel like I have a lot of thoughts and ideas swirling on how I want to continue moving forward in this space. I am currently working on my wellness certification, and so Wellness Coach Mac will be in the building very soon. I am shifting my focus of how I choose to express myself artistically to photography, to collage, to writing, actually. I started a Substack, and from the day that this episode will air, I think I should have already posted my first Substack article. We will see. I'm not putting any pressure on it. I'm going to just let it roll out. If you have been following along before, I did have a newsletter that I was not the most consistent with sending. My Substack is essentially what will be replacing the newsletter. So same space. If you were already subscribed to my newsletter, you will automatically be included in the Substack posts. So nothing to worry there. But if you are new, welcome, and come join us in the Substacky. I'd love to have ya. Anyways, I'll go ahead and wrap up the episode. If you are in a season of returning to yourself, I would love to hear what that looks like for you. How are you creating space to truly rest, to reflect, and to move gently into your next chapter? As always, thank you for tuning in to another episode of A Concept You, the podcast. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with your loved ones. And for more, connect with us on Instagram at aconceptyou or visit michaelacreates.com/ACY. Until next time, take care.